Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Miranda, and I am the Enchantress of Avalon. Now, for today's video, I actually am starting a new series here on my channel about Gothic literature, which anyone who is familiar with my work on my blog, whiteroseofavalon.life, or familiar with my videos, knows I'm a huge fan of all things magical and mystical, hence Enchantress of Avalon. So that also means I've always been obsessed with Gothic literature. And for today's video, I felt no better book could start this series than one of my all-time favorites, my favorite Gothic novel, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And I do want to do a shout out to my husband who actually got me this copy for my birthday, which was last week. So this is a brand new, very pretty copy with gilt edges. It's gorgeous and absolutely love it. So thank you very much, Andrew. And another little shout out to a birthday present my best friend Amy got for me. It's this lovely little pendant with a rose quartz and a fairy. And for today, I'm also dressed like Catherine's ghost from Wuthering Heights. I originally had this shawl up over my head. It was not working, so it's just around my shoulders right now. So now that we have established that, welcome to the first Gothic romance chat here on Enchantress of Avalon, my YouTube channel. So, and it is going to be a very macabre Monday. So, most people are at least vaguely familiar with this book. Wuthering Heights is absolutely iconic. It wasn't really so on its original reception. Jane Eyre was certainly more well liked. And it also led to a lot of confusion because the three sisters all published within the same span of time. A lot of people thought that all of these Bell publishers, because they published under the pseudonyms, the male pseudonyms of Currier, Ellis, and Acton Bell, were really all Currier Bell, which would have been Charlotte Bronte. And after the death of her sister, Charlotte Bronte did admit that they were really women and explained the whole history of how they got published, and that no, those works were not hers. And so basically, the book Wuthering Heights is this epic, tragic romance between Catherine and Heathcliff, who are children that meet and become best friends when Catherine Earnshaw's father brought Heathcliff back to their home, Wuthering Heights, as the title of the novel is. It's their house. That's the name of the house. So he brings back Heathcliff after this trip, and it's quite a shock, and no one knows of Heathcliff's origins, really. There are plenty of writers who have subsequently kind of written stories of Heathcliff's origins and also stories of what exactly happened in those years that he was gone. Because there's a famous, what happened? How did he attain all of his wealth? We'll never know what Emily Bronte would have said because, she never wrote that part. But we do know that he gained a lot of wealth very quickly. Well, Cathy and Heathcliff, though, when they're children, become very close, become best friends, and Heathcliff has a rivalry with Catherine's brother, Hindley Earnshaw, because Hindley doesn't like that he's being favored when he's this, gypsy boy that his father picked up somewhere. And why are you being favored over me? It's a valid question. And then things start to change. First, Catherine's mother dies, and the big change, though, is when her father dies. Hindley is off at school, at college, when his father dies, and he comes back, and he brings back with him a wife. No one even knew he was married. He just brought back a wife, and the wife wanted to dote on Catherine, but Catherine was really wild and out there at the time, and she felt distanced from this. And then Hindley started treating Heathcliff like a servant, and he wasn't allowed to dine with the family anymore. He wasn't allowed to take lessons with Catherine anymore to get an education, and all of these restrictions were placed upon him. But Catherine and Heathcliff did not let that stop them from, going out and running wild on the moors and having adventures. The major change, though, occurs when one night they were running amok on the moors because Hindley never stopped them from doing this because he just did not care. And Catherine and Heathcliff find themselves on the property of Thrushcross Grange. Yes, it's very hard to say. And that is the other important property. That is the Linton property. And they are kind of sighted. They start spying in the window and they see Edgar Linton and his little sister Isabella. And they're so prim and proper and they're kind of mocking them amongst themselves. But then they get heard and a dog gets loosed and the dog gets Catherine. This dog is like biting her foot. And she tells Heathcliff to leave because she's like, they're not going to do anything bad to me. But my brother already hates you. You're already in a bad situation. I don't want you to get caught. So he goes and he explains what's going on. And then Catherine spends quite a bit of time from that point at Thrushcross Grange with the Lintons. And she becomes a bit of a proper lady at that point. And that's a major change because she's no longer like Heathcliff's Cathy in his mind. And he also has to vie for her attention with Edgar Linton, whom she doesn't really love necessarily, but she likes the attention he pays her. She likes that he loves her, and she does have a plan that we find out. Well, Heathcliff and Cathy are in this, weird love triangle now with Edgar as the other person. And they're in their late teens. It's about the time when you're marriageable age, or they're going into their mid to late teens when you're marriageable age in this era. And Catherine doesn't know what to do. But one day, as, Heathcliff is jealous of the time she's spending with Edgar. Well, one day Edgar comes over and he proposes to her. And it's one of the most iconic scenes in the novel. I didn't actually say this, but this novel has two narrators, neither of which are Heathcliff or Cathy. The first narrator is this man named Mr. Lockwood, who's coming into the situation 18 years later in 1801. That's when the novel is set, when he's coming there. The rest of the novel is set much earlier. And he's coming into this wondering, like, why is Heathcliff the way he is? Because he's rented Thrushcross Grange from Heathcliff for a time, and he asks the caretaker at Thrushcross Grange, named Ellen Dean, or Nellie. She's most commonly called Nellie. And Nellie's been there all along. She knows the whole story. She originally worked at Wuthering Heights. She was raised with Cathy and Heathcliff, and then eventually became Cathy's lady's maid and was brought to the Grange when Cathy and Edgar married. Well, the question was, what exactly is going on? So she starts sharing her story. And so you have this narrator within a narrator, and there's a lot of question of as either a reliable narrator. We could debate that for a very long time. But Nellie tells this story of Catherine telling her that she got engaged. And she was like, tell me if I did the right thing. I already did say yes. Well, if you said yes, and Nellie's like, well, if you said yes, you can't undo it. But Catherine's like, I need to know if you think it's the right thing. And so Nellie asks, do you love him? And she's like, well, yes, I love that he's sweet and that he's kind and that he loves me. And those are all horrible reasons to love someone. That's not like really loving someone. And then she was like, Cathy's basically saying how she can't marry Heathcliff, even though she loves Heathcliff so much. But if she marries Edgar, she could use Edgar's money to help Heathcliff get out from under the thumb of her brother Hindley. That was her plan all along, was I'll marry this man that I have kind of tepid feelings for, who's kind to me at least, so that I could help the man I'm in love with get out from under my brother's thumb. Because if I married Heathcliff, we'd just be beggars forever. Like there'd be no upward mobility. Unfortunately, Heathcliff heard her talking about how she couldn't marry him because they'd be beggars, and he left. And then she spends days in the rain out searching for him and gets incredibly ill. And then he never comes back for 3 years. Like 3 full years go by. And when he eventually does come back, it's after Kathy and Edgar have married, and then he has his own plots. He's gotten a lot of money over this time, so he's renting out a room at Wuthering Heights from Hindley Earnshaw, and Hindley's in a lot of debt. So when Hindley is borrowing money from Heathcliff, eventually when Hindley dies, Heathcliff's left Wuthering Heights because he owed him so many debts. And then Heathcliff eventually marries Isabella Linton, partially to piss off Kathy, partially to piss off Edgar, who of course did not want him as brother-in-law. And he treats her terribly once they're married, which is par for the course. Of course, he never cared about her. He thought she was annoying and just way too innocent to actually believe he would love her. And finally, this like weird love triangle, love square, or whatever you want to call it, it's coming to a head. And Heathcliff's having a bit of a hard time with it when he finds out that Catherine is pregnant. And there are people that interpret Catherine as actually being pregnant with Heathcliff's child. The book does state that it's Edgar's daughter, but we do know that Kathy and Heathcliff were spending a lot of time together when he came back, unsupervised. So, who knows? It was a Victorian novel. We don't know exactly what happened. And the next part of the book is after Kathy has died. She died in childbed, but it is alluded to that she probably had consumption. And then she haunts Heathcliff for 18 years through the deaths of Edgar and Isabella, and eventually the marriage of Heathcliff and Isabella's son to Kathy's daughter, also named Catherine, to make all the Catherines very confusing. And then Linton Heathcliff, which is Heathcliff's son, dies. And that's where you're at when the novel commences. And this is why that famous scene that, Kate Bush used this as inspiration for her famous song, Wuthering Heights, of Kathy's ghost haunting Heathcliff, let me in the window, and all of that great stuff, happens at the very beginning of the novel. And that's what draws you in. How did that happen? And then it has one of the greatest endings, in my opinion. A lot of people call it anticlimactic, but I think it's super romantic. And it is Kathy and Heathcliff haunting the moors together. So they finally get to be together in death. Now, I will say, yes, people might ask, Kathy and Heathcliff were horrible people. Like, they were bad to others. But they were also incredibly in love with one another and would do anything for the other. And even though they're technically considered unlikable, I've always loved them as characters. And I read the book every year around my birthday. So that's why I've just, been rereading the book. And also what inspired me to start this new series. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. And I'm going to link in the description box below 2 of my blog posts about Wuthering Heights. Thank you. Bye now.